Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.
Hello and welcome back to the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Grey Goose Master Distiller François Thibault and Global Director of Brand Experience Joe McCanta show how the iconic brand came into existence and its evolution into the household name it is today. In partnership with the Australian Open, Joe shares his process of developing the Lemon Ace cocktail, attempting to capture the essence of the tournament, while François provides some history on the brand's heritage and their new product, Altius. Hello and welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
I'm excited to be on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you here in Australia for the Australian Open.
And at Le Martini Bar, too.
Absolutely. This is my, I think, third or fourth time here now.
Yeah.
Been here heaps of times.
You're
I feel
a regular.
Like I'm a regular now, yeah. So thank you for having me in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great.
Joe, the first question that I ask on the program is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. I'd love to know what you have for the show today.
Okay, I mean, there's so many. I think a crazy story, I end up doing a lot of really high-profile events for Grey Goose. So I've done the cocktails at the Oscars 7 years in a row.
Wow.
I've done the cocktails for the Grammys once. We've done a lot of work with the Elton John AIDS Foundation, raising money. I think most of my crazy stories personally involve my past life as a piano player. I studied jazz piano.
Wow.
And I've just used this medium of drinks making to bully my way onto pianos all around the world. And one of the craziest stories, I was hosting a drinks-only event that was at Elton John's house. It was an auctioned event for the Elton John AIDS Foundation. I created all the cocktails. They were all quite themed. Somebody bid on it, and it was 10 people, and they get to experience this at his house. And so I'm in his kitchen making these drinks, and his partner, David, comes in, and we start chatting. He's like, what did you do? I'm like, I was a piano player. He's like, no way. And truly, I taught myself by ear listening to every Elton John song.
Wow.
Like, he was my hero.
Wow, okay.
So I mentioned this in passing. And then I go back to like batching drinks and getting ready for these guests to come in. And the next thing I know, David's like, hey, Elton, come in. And he's telling the man himself that I'm a piano player, and it ends up with me sitting at the piano playing for Elton John.
Were you not intimidated in that moment? You're like,
thankfully, I had been straw testing my batches.
Oh, good.
At that stage.
That'll help. That'll help.
But I mean, talk about, an amazing thing that hospitality can bring you into. It's all full circle for me. I've also had so many service moments. I don't know if I have time for two stories, but
we have time for two.
If I talk about an exceptional a moment that crystallized in my mind what hospitality means. I was living in Istanbul, opening restaurants and bars as a consultant. And it was my very first trip to where I live now, which is London. I'd gotten on a plane. I had a list of places to go check out. And the first place on the list was a little bar called Montgomery Place. You've probably heard of before. I walked in. I still had my suitcase. I didn't even go to the hotel. Walk in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see a bunch of bars. And there's this bartender. It's a sunken down little bar, and it's packed. I mean, it's heaving with people. And the bar is almost like in a hole in the midst of all of these people. And I look and there's one bartender slinging drinks like I've never seen before. And that was Algo Peroni, one of the world's greatest mixologists now.
Wow.
Algo from the Connaught Bar. But this was before he was at the Connaught. And I crossed off every other bar on the list. I stayed at Montgomery Place until it closed. And just watched him operate. And it was like watching, an octopus operating. The amount of times his hands were going all over the place, the garnishes, and every drink was perfect and every guest was smiling. And afterwards, I just had to introduce myself and, I hopped behind the bar, got a picture with him. And that was 18 years ago. And
wow.
I'll go to our great friends now. So he's one of my icons.
That's amazing. So talk me through then your piano background and how you then, were you playing the piano before this story here? That one there?
I have a degree in jazz piano from the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. It is my passion. It used to be my profession. But, I moved to New York City to try to make it as a piano player.
As many musicians do.
As many musicians do. And as you probably know, the hospitality is a great way for helping artists or musicians fund their passions. You can do it part-time. I was making cash as just a bartender. And so, paid the rent. And I had a rock band that I had formed with my then partner called Semi-Precious Weapons. We were actually the first ever touring band to open for Lady Gaga's first world tour. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was my old
that's
old
so
life.
cool.
And a lot of those guys are still, in fact, the bass player for that band is now the bass player for DNCE, which is like the Jonas Brothers side project. The drummer plays for Gwen Stefani now. The singer has written millions of really good. He wrote "Good Luck, Babe," the Chaperone song that's up for Song of the Year this year.
Wow. Okay.
So he's a quite well-known songwriter. So
Goodness.
yeah. And then I went into booze.
Yeah. Okay. Talk me through then how some of those creative aspects translate into cocktails and into the work you do now.
That's a great question. I mean, I really think it's the thing I learned most from music is appreciation for improvisation. The jazz in particular is an improvisatory art form. And every great bartender needs to improvise. Sometimes you get 5 words to find out what drink to recommend to somebody. And you then, just like music, you then go into your catalog of the history of great cocktails, much like a musician would go into the catalog of their great songs that they'd learned and pull out and then reshape those drinks to be their own. So I think there's really, for me, a real deep connection. And a bartender is ultimately, the biggest difference between a bartender and a chef is a bartender is a performer at the end of the day. We're in front of the guests. We're not hiding out back. Nothing against
Not
you,
that
chefs.
are hiding out the back.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get no.
Generally,
no.
Unless it's an open playing.
That's true. I completely agree, and that's changed actually a lot too. But it's funny because
you got to be friendly to our brethren out there. Of course.
I don't want to. I love.
I've never been
chefs.
a chef.
Okay,
I've actually never been a chef.
I've
myself.
never been a chef, but I spent so much time with them. Especially pastry chefs. Every time I worked in a bar in a restaurant, I would get side by side with the pastry chefs. I'm very lucky. I've been able to work with some of the world's best chefs in this career for Grey Goose. I've worked with the El Bulli team we brought to an event, which was incredible. And of course, probably one of my favorite is Alain Ducasse. We launched a vodka with Alain. We came here to Australia, did an event here, and I, for a year, toured with him and paired his phenomenal French cuisine with my cocktails using his liquid, which was just like mind-blowing. But I've also worked Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay, and I have the utmost respect for chefs. But a bartender is on display in a way that maybe chefs aren't always.
Generally, yeah.
And I believe in the performance aspect of it. I mean, Jerry Thomas, if you look at Jerry Thomas, he was first and foremost a performer. He would throw the blue blazer across, and he had Tom and Jerry as 2 little mice running around. He kept 2 mice on his shoulders.
I did not know
One
about
was
the
called
mice.
Tom, one was called Jerry. And they were pets, and they would just run around on his shoulders in front of...
I've not heard that. I don't know about it.
Bonkers. It's a true story, though. He was amazing.
I'm going to have to fact check that for
fact
sure.
Fact check it.
Yeah.
Look it up. You heard it here first. Tom and Jerry. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Some stories.
And now I'm worried that it's not true, but let's find out.
It may not, but it's a great story.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's the thing. I mean, all great stories around bars have this thing that's larger than life.
They're more
folklore.
They sort of become myths.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's more of a myth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a legend than
I
an
mean,
actual
it's
story.
very true, and there's ultimately they get twisted along the way because, let's face it, when alcohol is involved, people don't always remember as well as they should.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The second question that I normally ask is why you do what you do. So I'm trying to understand, and I've connected a little bit around the creative aspect and how that evolved into the drinks industry. Talk me through why you do what you do. Like, why do you want to get up and do the things that you do every day?
Well, I mean, for me, hospitality, that word, it comes from a concept that is just really ingrained in me, which is service. I love the idea of serving people. I love creating things that make people smile. And those things could be drinks, but they could be experiences. My position now is technically I'm global head of director of brand experience. I do everything from creating the glassware for Grey Goose to, our drink strategy to the educational programs to creating home visits, everything in between. And I don't know any other career that I can do so many aspects of being a part of making people's days maybe slightly better. And I love this industry because it is about service. One of my mentors, the great Dale DeGroff that you've interviewed before, here,
In
it
this
was right
same
here.
bar.
I invoke him a lot. I learned so much from Dale, and you can see with him this in action because he immediately lights up at the idea of serving one person a drink and, giving them a smile. And I have so many stories of, when people are at their happiest, you're, as the bartender, helping them celebrate. When people are at their lowest, you can sometimes comfort them, just by having a chat and, everything in between. So we really get the whole gamut of the human experience. And yeah, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, really.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the term. It's slightly different, but it's the same term, the human experience, and thinking about that, the human condition and how we're so connected to that raw experience of what people are going through in their lives.
Completely.
I want to focus on something more specifically that you mentioned there in around your role in drinks strategy and drinks design. And we're obviously here for the Australian Open. We're here for the Australian Open. Talk me through the canned drink that I tried the other day. Tell us what it is and what was involved to get it to what it came to be. Because I understand that particularly with the passion fruit syrup, there's something special about that as well. So talk me
and
through
there's so many things. So this is an amazing opportunity. So this is the first year that Grey Goose is the official partner of the Australian Open. We've been working, our drink, the Honeydews, is kind of like a thing of legend now in New York for the US Open. It's a drink that kind of has become the icon of those 2 weeks of those matches. And when we decided to partner with the Australian Open, we wanted to create the next Honeydews. What's a new version of why that drink works so well? So that was the starting point. It was very simple. And I was like, I like doing this when I'm out at a bar. I'll dissect, when I find a drink I love, I'll break it down to its components. Like, why do I like this? And so I did that with the Honeydews. I was like, well, what are the three parts, that make this drink? One, it looks so iconic. It's got these little tennis balls, which are honeydew melon balls, same color as a tennis ball, sat in the drink, which is undeniably, owning to that cocktail. You don't really see that kind of garnish elsewhere. Two, it's so sessionable. It's Grey Goose, lemonade, tiny bit of raspberry liqueur, and that's it. Super refreshing for the hot sun. And then three, it comes in a real limited edition cup. So people collect those cups, and it's almost like a rite of passage to see how many you can collect. And with that in mind, I kind of approached making this drink, but I wanted to use, first and foremost, Australian-inspired ingredients. You've got such a bevy of fresh ingredients here on this continent, starting with that. And I find the lemons are amazing. There's a freshness, there's a viscosity to them, slightly sweeter actually than some of the lemons that I've tried elsewhere, probably more similar to like what you get in southern France or Italy as well. And so I made a sparkling lemonade first and foremost. Passion fruit's in season. I think it's about 7 months a year here. Passion fruit's one of those flavors that just doesn't disappoint people. It's tangy, it's got some edge to it, it's aromatic, and a little goes a really long way. And then fresh herbs, so a bit of fresh mint. But then I wanted to get that iconic garnish. So doing something that any bartender could do, because it's on the lists all over Australia at the moment for these 2 weeks. So we just take a lemon twist, but popping up a bottle cap from, a beer or soda water, pushing it through as like a little bit of a mold, you get a little spinning tennis ball kind of fuzziness on the sides, which you probably saw the other night. Like people were loving taking pictures of their drinks, and it screams tennis, when you see that. So that was kind of the thinking behind it. But there were limitations for the drink. One, it had to be under 5.2% ABV, which is just a legal part of the drinks in the Australian Open. And then two, whilst we make it fresh on the grounds itself, you've been down there, there's tons of F&B spots around the grounds, and it's just not feasible to make fresh drinks at those spots. They sell beer, They sell like some canned wine, that sort of thing. So we thought, why don't we can it as well and get that reach of the drink? Worked with an amazing company here in Australia called Curative. Probably heard of before.
Yep. A lot of listeners in the beverage industry all know.
I have the utmost respect and passion for them too. I think they did a phenomenal job, and we were doing this remotely. So I'd tweak a recipe, it'd get flown to me in London, or sometimes I was in the States at the time because I travel quite a bit.
Sorry to
go ahead.
interrupt you there. This process as well, I understand that you, obviously with large businesses, it takes a while to approve these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Talk me through then when you started this process.
Well, to be honest,
and then please do continue.
No, of course. I mean, this was record timing to get this product ready in time for the Open. For a business like, as large as the Bacardi family who own Grey Goose, we had an amazing team that came up with the can itself and the artwork. We had the creative team who were working with me on the liquid. And we all kind of got together to really push this through as quickly as possible, knowing that we had the deadline of this week.
How long did that take? How many months?
Honestly, the last time, the head of F&B for the Australian Open came to London. She was in London in November, and that's the first time I met her. I had 5 drink ideas ready to present as like, here we go. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I want to do. I had the tennis ball idea at that time, but then I had lots of different drinks, all kind of that sessionable, refreshing style. And we just hit it off really well. Fern, she's amazing. The whole Australian Open team are great. And we just started talking, and none of my drinks really necessarily hit it for her. She thought they were delicious. She was just like, I think we could do better. I think we could do better. And I grabbed some passion fruit, and it all just kind of came together like that. It was a very collaborative moment. That was in November, and here we are in January.
Yeah.
So
I really didn't
really fast.
Take that long, actually.
No,
yeah,
no.
Wow.
But when everybody's minds were in the right place, once we had the blueprint of the drink, we knew that we were ready, and let's just go guns a-blazing to get it properly canned.
Wow. Joe, I've been wondering how you maintain a consistent brand experience globally. There are obviously lots of different places you've got to connect together to make this consistent experience.
I mean, consistency is the hardest part of my job because the brand is at different speeds even in different markets. There's different awareness levels of Grey Goose in different markets, and then the industries in different places. But the key is really understanding what you stand for. I liken it to a bar. A bar that really knows what they're about will always act consistently. And the personality of the bar shines through from the top to the bottom, from the people working at it to the way it's laid out, to the drinks they serve, everything, to the music they play. It all becomes this one entity. And I think of Grey Goose like that. We know what we stand for, which is a naturally tasteful vodka, and that's at the heart of all we do. And naturally tasteful is a great way of putting it because we're only made by nature, only 2 ingredients, wheat, water. But there's a French style of taste too, class, I guess you would say, or kind of chicness that kind of leads into too. So everything that we do revolves around this concept of, is it naturally tasteful? If we say yes to an event, if we make a new product, if we launch, a partnership, it all has to be under that same kind of umbrella. And I think for me, my journey, was coming from music, as we said, and even just being a bartender. I use that mentality of being behind the bar every day. And even with this concept of thinking about the brand Grey Goose, the way I would think of it being my own bar, that's the kind of way that the journey existed for me, because I went from really thinking about a small scale attention to detail in the on-trade to applying that to everything that we do out in the world. And for me, it's really about distillation. It's about getting to the kernel. What's the heart of what this brand is all about? If you can really take all of the things that we do at Grey Goose and funnel it down to one concept, that's really what my job is. And that's what I've been trying to do.
There's something in there that I'd like to address just after this quick question. But did you work in other brand roles before going into, obviously, a global role? There's quite a jump there from working in bars to...
I'm so lucky. I didn't. I mean, I worked as a consultant for people opening restaurants, but never for a brand. The first brand I ever worked for, actually, I did some one-off bits here and there. I did some work as a consultant for some brands. I worked for a cognac brand for a bit, but one-off things. Never. The first job I got for a brand was Grey Goose, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow, amazing.
And so I've just been with one brand ever since.
Well, on the note of taste of Grey Goose, let's quickly have a little taste here.
Yeah, so I'm going to make you, we've got a brand new expression of Grey Goose, which is inspired by the French Alps. You're going to hear a lot more about it from our founder and the man who created the liquid. But I wanted you to try the way that I've been serving this drink to people, which is reimagining the idea of a shot. So shot, usually 40% or higher ABV. A shot needs to be cold to be lovely. But for me, because this product was inspired by the French Alps, I thought, what if we use the concept of snow and serve this shot, our shot, over real snow? And we have a how did they do that moment where, I think I mentioned this the other day, little known fact, Alexander the Great, thousands of years ago, he used to travel all the time with a huge box of snow from the Afghani mountains. And only his top guests would get served water or wine or whatever over snow. And this could be in the middle of the desert. It was a true luxury.
Jeez.
So
I didn't know this. This is a new story. You didn't tell me this the other day.
You can fact check that one too. So we actually have created these insulated snow boxes. They come to the table, and I'm going to make you our snow shot now.
Perfect.
Okay. So this is our Grey Goose Altius. You'll hear a lot more about it from the man that made it. But this is our snow shot. And let me redo that. The great thing is we've got these glasses that really mirror the shape of this bottle, which is quite unique. And it's quite different from the Grey Goose vodka bottle. And as you pour a little bit of the Altius over this freshly crushed snow, right in front of the grass.
Snow today.
Yeah, we will. Wait, you said it was the magic of podcasting. But you get two things that happen, and it is happening even with this slightly larger snow.
Just for those watching, they'll be like, that's not snow.
We
don't have it here today.
We give snow machines to a lot of the accounts that we're working with, actual snow machines.
Cool.
But yeah, today, sorry everybody, it's the magic of doing this on the fly. But you'll get the same thing. You get a dilution that happens immediately. When it's the real snow, and it's almost done it here, it disappears into the drink. And guests get a nice cold 20% ABV serve, which I'll let you try now. And it's fun. It's about creating a ritual. So that how did they do that moment, I think about a lot. And watching and reimagining a shot and the way that I don't want anything to get in the way of this beautiful liquid. I just want the experience, again, brand experience, to be as best as it possibly can. So santé.
Santé. It's so, and the thing about Altius is it's so clean. Like, I mean, it doesn't do it justice to really say clean, but obviously a lot of vodka is very lean and clean.
Yeah.
But it's just so
directional
and down the line. Like it's,
thank you.
There's nothing else really. Do you know what I mean? Obviously you do.
I get a depth of minerality that I think I find really interesting.
So a word I wouldn't use is simple.
No.
It is direct, lean, clean, down the line, but it's not simple. It's...
I know what you mean.
Yeah?
Yeah, it knows what it is, and it's delivering on the taste of the Alps in many ways, that minerality of mineral veins where the water travels through. You get some of that. I use the term, and you're going to love this. Is a very marketing thing to say for all of our people.
I'm glad you've prefaced this.
I use the term glacially smooth.
Okay.
Just picture a glacier while you sip it. That was a glacially smooth comment to make, right?
Probably get some B-roll in there of glacier.
The tip of the iceberg. Okay, wait, we're going to keep going.
It's only going to be the tip of the iceberg today, unfortunately, for time. But Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Awesome to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy learning a little bit more about this with the man himself.
The interview with François runs a little bit differently because his English isn't that great. So we've got a translator present to help things. So the words that you're going to hear are his, but she's just translating them.
Hello and welcome to the show, François. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you sitting down with me today. Obviously, Grey Goose has an incredible history in not too long, really, but an incredible history about the brand. And it's a pleasure to sit down with you, someone who's been so influential in the business. So thank you.
Thank you, James.
The first question that I have for you today, Francois, is actually a crazy hospitality story. I normally ask, this is the first question on the show, almost every episode. Would love to know if you've got a crazy story or exceptional experience that you'd like to share.
He owes a lot to his parents, and his parents gift him the gift of nature and like valuing nature. So he knew straight away that his job will have to do something with nature.
Yeah.
And he went to study nature by studying wines and the terroir of the wine. So he started studying enology.
Which has a very long history in France. Obviously, there's an incredibly deep history, the winemaking in France.
It's an institution, it's a culture. He always say France is a huge barrel of wine, more than 350 appellation of origin.
Yeah.
And over 3,000 wine, a different wine, known in the worldwide world.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe too well known, because sometimes they're so well known that, because everyone wants it, so it's so hard to get it. So he's very sad that he can't get some of his wines.
What wine do you wish you could get?
Par exemple, je suis fasciné par le goût du Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Châteauneuf-du-Pape, yeah.
Yeah, Saint-Emilion, when he tried to go and get from the crew of Saint-Emilion, they always tell him, oh, sorry, Francois, we don't have it anymore.
Oh, no, it's too popular.
Yeah. So in that way, he's fascinated, in a way that the soul can transmit something to the grape, and the grape can retransmit it to us. And it's the whole notion of terroir. Obviously, not only the soil.
No, this concept, absolutely. I want to look at that in a bit more detail and talk me then through how you evolved from wine into spirits and how that process took place.
So from studying wine in general and the terroir for wine, he came back to focus on his childhood terroir, which is cognac.
Yeah,
so he started to study terroir of cognac for wines.
Okay.
So eventually he came back to study the terroir of cognac, because down the line he actually had a plan, which was to already get into cognac, the product.
Okay.
So, but by studying the region and the wine that you can make within the region, you're kind of getting a little entry gate within cognac.
What are the wines of cognac? I'm not familiar with.
Mostly Uni Blanc, which you only make cognac from white grapes. So you've got Uni Blanc across 6 different appellations of origin. So you'll have different profile and different taste for that same grape. And then a common distillation process. So the same for everyone. It's a double distillation in a pot still with a finish period at 72%. And after that, you have the aging process in French oak barrel. And from there, you do the blending, which is very to each their own, depending on the companies. But I think it's quite interesting to notice and to remember, to tell people that there is only one person in cognac overseeing the whole process.
Ah, so they're quite influential.
So the maître de chai oversees the whole process of making cognac, from the distillation to the blending to the aging, etc. And this is a very long process, obviously, like an expert person reaching to that probably one of the highest grade at least in cognac. And when that person eventually goes and retires, they have to pass on that responsibility and that title to someone else, to the trainee. And François was lucky enough to obtain that formation, like that training and that title. It's a big responsibility, obviously, because you not only have, you're becoming an expert, but you're obtaining the succession of every barrel in the distillery and the company.
Yeah, it's the heritage of the brand. You're inheriting this responsibility.
So you got a lot of responsibility, because you're representing, obviously, the brand that you're working for. You are responsible for making the product and using those different barrel when you're blending. But you also have to replace the barrel you're using for the next generation.
Is it?
That kind of sustainability process.
Is it?
So usually it's a big responsibility, like we say, but François stayed for 25 years in the same company, and he probably should have stayed within that role for the rest of his career, and making him probably as old as one of his barrel.
Oh, wow.
But something would happen, and you didn't know it yet. In 1990s, an American, very famous distributor, very smart, but also visionary, came to France to meet with François and his company. He was actually looking for a cognac company that could make him his own brand of cognac for the American
In
market.
1990.
In
So in
1990.
1990, an American wanted to find a cognac brand.
Exactly.
Or wanted to make his own cognac
Yeah,
brand.
exactly. Use that cognac brand to make his own cognac to
Yep.
be able to distribute it on
In America?
In America.
Okay.
Only.
Only in America. Okay.
So it was a successful deal, operation, partnership.
So he was a marketer, salesman, distributor.
Distributeur, oui. La marque s'appelait Jacques Gardin, GC.
So they made a cognac called Jacques Gardin, and that was distributed in the United States of America, and it was actually quite successful. So when he came back in 1996, he's got a new project. He wants to make a premium vodka for the American market from France. So at first, I think the cognac company didn't quite understand and being like, oh, this is a great idea. Congratulations. And he was like, yeah, I'm telling you, because you're going to make it for me. And talking to François, you're going to make it for me. François was really impressed by that man, and he didn't know anything about vodka, but somehow he still said yes.
Why did you say yes, even though you didn't know?
He loves challenge.
Okay.
François has a tremendous amount of respect for Sidney Frank, and he's kind of like idolizing him in a way, just because Sidney Frank has such a tremendous amount of respect for the produce he was distributing in the US.
Very good. On that note, though, so even though you like the challenge, I understand that you also like perfection. And that's very, very difficult to achieve both.
This is true, but he actually wasn't as knowledgeable. So when he conceived like the idea of making a vodka, he had two options. So he could have bought a neutral spirit. It's the easiest way. It costs the least amount of money, and it's probably the fastest one. You distill it a few times, add some water, and you've got a vodka.
Sure.
The second option is to create the product from the scratch, from the beginning. And François always did that, especially with cognac. And so he decided that he will do that. So according to that philosophy, he needs to choose an ingredient and transform it into the spirit.
Yeah.
François looked back into the history, and you must think that potato was the first thing that people used to make vodka. But according to history, it's actually wheat. Vodka originating from the Eastern country, François could have come and get the wheat, the original material for making vodka from the Eastern country. But why going to the Eastern country when France already produced 7% of the total worldwide?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, of
Wow.
wheat. So to France produce 7% of like the amount in the world of wheat. So there is no point going somewhere else when
It's already there.
it's here. So obviously it's here, it's in France, it's in the north of France. This is what we call the basket of bread. But on top of that, it's not only local and here and present, it's also like a great produce, which has been used for like a decade or century to make pain, like bread, baguette, pain au chocolat, croissant, like all the best things that you can make from wheat. And obviously we got people mastering the crafts. Well, look further, really.
Your learnings around grapes, I imagine, translated then into learning about wheat. It sounds like you really gravitated towards understanding how wheat works in addition to that.
It's very true. It's exactly that. It's like using that knowledge from one produce to another. Everyone used to tell him he changed job. It was a different career, a different job. To obtain vodka, you need to transform a produce by fermentation. He knew that already through his wine study. To make a vodka, you need then to distill your wine, and he already learned that making cognac. So at the end of the day, it's just a sum of what he learned in wine and in cognac.
A bit of wheat as well.
It's just it's a matter of details.
Yeah.
It's like a musician that knows how to play several instruments.
And we just had a chat with a musician before there with Joe. So
c'est un musicien, lui.
Yeah.
C'est un musicien.
You are as well?
No,
Joe?
not fun.
No.
But Joe is.
Joe's definitely a musician.
So thanks to like that location where we can find the wheat in Picardy, also happens the transformation of the produce. So everything happened within the same region, within the same locality.
While we're focused on that, talk me through what makes the terroir different there, specifically there regarding, compared to other places.
So one thing in Picardy is the terroir is quite uniform over the territory of it. What makes Picardy producing the best wheat, probably in the world, according to some of these experts, it's the combination of the soil and the climate. So you've got a few categories and it's like worldwide. And that wheat coming from Picardy has the highest grade of those categories, BPS, Blé Panifiable Supérieur.
is because I wasn't aware that 7% of the wheat production in the world comes from France, or it did at the time, but it does make sense. But then also that it's optimal conditions for growing wheat, according to some. That's something that I wasn't aware of.
And that's something that also friends are like to highlight. It's like, obviously, like, it's the baguette is probably the best translation of the quality of that wheat, being worldwide famous. But there is something to acknowledge. It's not only the quality of the ingredients matters extremely, but it's also the craft of the people that handle it. So like boulanger, bakers, pastry makers. So to highlight how important it is and how like crucial it is, when you come to France and you visit, and there is about 100 million every year coming and visit France, all take picture, but they will all remember one thing, it's the taste of the baguette.
Okay.
La baguette, le beurre, et le fromage.
And the cheese.
Yeah, the cheese. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
So he learned to work with that wheat, but then he decided that he wanted to have control over every step of the work and of the process. Grey Goose is working with cooperative. It's quite particular to Europe and especially France. It's like an organization that looks over a smaller producer rather than a big company. It's like working hand in hand with like smaller producer and then smaller estate. And then they get together to buy, material for like the warehousing, etc. And so Grey Goose is working with some cooperative to get that wheat. François did a list of all the steps necessary to be taken to make that spirit. So every day the wheat comes to the facilities, is cleaned up, and then it's going to be milled to get a very particular and detailed flour out of it. So before like milling, we removing the envelope of the grain, which is actually quite rich in protein and like heaps of good nutrient, and that is given to like cattle and other farm animal. So you obtain that really wheat flour that smells like pastry, almost like vanilla. So flour contains starch. Enzyme will help converting starch to glucose or sugars. You can add some yeast. It kicks out the process of fermentation. And so because it's a unique and continuous process, rather than having one tank of fermentation, there is six of them.
Voilà.
And what happened is like the mix, like the flour before getting fermented, like comes into the first tank, start fermenting, overflow to the second one, keep fermenting, overflow to the third one, so on and so on. So obviously you've got, if you had a diagram, you could see like two cubes, one going down, which is the sugar content.
Oh, so the sugar content drops.
Yeah, it will drop.
Because in each 6, so is there a specific level that you want the sugar content to be before it goes into the next one?
Ça se fait naturellement.
So no, it's the all natural. It's just like to allow that flow and that continuous process.
Ouais. Cascade fermentation.
Yeah.
The only one that is actually known for the sugar content and the alcohol content is the last one with 0 sugar and 12 to 13% of alcohol. And since you've got a wheat wine with no sugar anymore, you can distill that.
Wow, okay.
And you cannot distill vodka in a pot still since you need to have a finished product at 96%. So it's a one distillation, unique distillation with 5 different steps.
And all Grey Goose is only one. Is that correct?
5 steps, only one distillation.
Well, a lot of brands like brag about like doing a process over and over. François insists on doing it all once, the right time and the right one.
So how do you maintain consistency?
So the knowledge of the technicality of each and every step, and you've got someone responsible for each single step. So the goal being to get the best qualities, like the best of the best of every single step before the produce goes to the next step. So in all the process, there is like dozen, maybe 100 parameters. Every single parameter is highly controlled and you can like oversee it. Even like count yeast in every different tank during fermentation. Quality is about regularity. Within the distillation, the 5 different steps are obviously like highly regarded and controlled and like defined, which allow the concentration of the wheat flavor. There is 3 different alcohol that you need to get rid of while you do distillation. The first one is aldehyde.
Aldehyde, superior alcohol, fusel oil, for example, superior alcohol.
So the category called superior alcohols.
Okay, yep.
The last one is methanol.
Methanol, yeah.
So since they're actually doing their own fermentation and overseeing their own fermentation, and it's the highest quality it can be. There is actually really little alcohol that you need to get rid of within the distillation.
Right. Oh, because of this cascade method that you
Exactement.
do.
So while other people will try to get rid of the default, if you focus on the quality and on the process, you'll have less default to get rid of.
Yeah, it makes sense that if you work with such precision that you have less error that you have to remove. I'd like to focus on one specific part of this process, and that's on the chill filtration, because I understand that this is something very specific about the Altius. So talk me through the fact that, from what I understand, no one else has rapidly chilled it to minus 24 degrees from memory. Talk me through this process and what you do.
So there is a common point between Grey Goose and Altius, the one you just mentioned before, that they use the same spirit base. So like I said, like we're using the same base spirit. The difference is at 2 points. So in Grey Goose Original, François is using the water, underground water from Cognac, Jansac-La-Palud. So whereas for Altius, the water comes from up high, 1,000 meters of altitude, from the French Alps. And it's also to showcase, it's also a nod to the fact that in France, we've got so many great water sources, water like spring water, like of high quality. And with the filtration process, François wanted to recreate the condition of the high mountain and recreating what the water must go through being up high in that mountain. So he tried to recreate those conditions by doing a filtration at minus 24 degrees. It's a very slow filtration of only milliliter per hour and a constant agitation.
Et la filtration.
Yeah, so that doesn't freeze.
Yeah. So it's a very different result from Grey Goose Original.
Cheers.
Salut.
Salut.
Oh, what is
Santé.
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 So obviously it's quite different. And what we find when we tried it, you almost have that cold sensation, that like glacial sensation on the front. In mid-palate, you've got that smoothness.
You still get the coating. It's still quite coats your mouth. Still,
Yeah, like very
viscous.
velvety.
Yeah, velvety and like viscous almost.
And then on the back palate, you've got almost like that kind of slight acidity, which is due to the minerality of the water we've been using. All of that wouldn't happen if we didn't have from the get-go such a high quality wheat spirit.
Oh, wheat.
Texture and smoothness and velvety come from that yummy notes from the wheat.
It's interesting to hear that, because often people think it's the butter that and in these things, when they have butter on bread, that causes a lot of that sort of texture. But you're saying it could be the quality of the wheat.
From François' experience, you need to let the quality express itself. So for that, you need to choose a quality ingredient. So that bottle like is actually representing altitude as a mountain. So it's a hand bottling. It's very special. It's a very special bottle, quite complex to make actually. And does look like to François, he thinks. He's got his hair a little bit high, aiming for the stars, but he's always grounded in the ground.
Very good. Santé.
Santé bonheur.
I have one last question for you, François. Who would you like to hear on the program?
He would like to have a workmate, like a colleague, someone that shares the same philosophy and that would like to make a product of quality, So obviously, since Grey Goose was created for like the last 28 years, a lot of people within the spirit industry, but also within the wine industry, understood the message of the quality and the control over every single step and appropriate them to themselves. Grey Goose brought two fundamental things. So the change of perception of the vodka in the world.
Is it?
As whereas before, it was a different perception. Since Grey Goose, like there is a top 5, top 10 of premium vodka. Yeah, and since then, like not only vodka, but every spirit companies and like a category have changed the way of making their spirit. People say, does it not upset you that you're being copied? And François say, no. It's good to have competition and it's better for the consumers.
Absolutely. François, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much.
Me too.
Thank you very much for chatting with me
James.
today.
Thank you so much.
This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.